Our goal as educators is to inspire students to ask probing questions and to seek complex answers. Here in this first lecture, we're going to take a look at the C3 framework and how it can guide us towards this goal. This document will serve as the main text for this course, and it is available for download as part of the course. But let's begin with the inspiration for the C3. Social studies students. Often, when students are asked what they think about social studies, they typically say things like, "It's so boring. I hate memorizing all of those dates." We sure watch a lot of movies. As a social studies educator for over 20 years, I cringe when I hear this. Yet, I'm a bit empathetic to students' experience. While there are certainly notable exceptions, I probably would have said the same thing back in middle or high school. The C3 tries to shake this tired expectation by making the argument that social studies is not about rote memorization of discrete facts. Instead, social studies begins and ends with big ideas and questions. Questions like, should the NSA be able to listen in to our phone calls? How is privacy protected in America? Is Edward Snowden a hero or a traitor? Students in the C3 classroom should be at the center of these questions, blurring lines between academic inquiries and civic action, always thinking outwardly about the ways in which their classroom experiences could and should impact their community. When students are at the center of these kinds of discussions, we realize that we're preparing them for far more than college and career. We are preparing students for a rich and engaging civic life. I would like to begin our exploration of the C3 by introducing you to the inquiry arc. The inquiry arc serves as the backbone of the document and for this course. The inquiry arc is made up of 4 interlocking and mutually reinforcing dimensions. Those 4 dimensions are Dimension 1, developing questions and planning inquiries. Dimension 2, applying disciplinary concepts and tools. Dimension 3, evaluating sources and using evidence. And Dimension 4, communicating conclusions and taking informed action. Let's begin with Dimension 1. Inquiries begin with questions. Those gnawing questions that send us in search of answers. In the C3 framework, we call these types of questions compelling questions. These are those thorny questions that get under our skin and spark an inquiry. For example, was the American Revolution really that revolutionary? Should we build a transcontinental pipeline? How bad was the Great Recession? As we move through this course, Naomi and I will be working with you to develop compelling questions and to understand the important role that questions play within an inquiry. Dimension 2 is where the disciplines reside. In this dimension, civics, economics, geography, and history are described as unique ways of thinking. In the C3, we often refer to these disciplines as lenses. The disciplinary lenses gives us important tools and concepts for helping us understand an inquiry. For example, when we are examining a question like, how bad was the Great Recession? We might use a historical lens to help us understand this latest recession in comparison to other recessions. Students might look at historical documents like journals, newspaper articles, interviews to understand the human toll of the latest economic downturn. They might compare these perspectives to individuals from the 1930s. Students could also use an economic lens to help measure the impact of the Great Recession. For example, a student could measure its impact by looking at data, like the number of people unemployed and how the slowdown impacted the production of goods and services. With a question in hand and the disciplinary tools for understanding, the inquiry arc turns to sources and evidence in Dimension 3. Students begin to sift through sources to locate information that is needed to address the inquiry question. Evidence can come from many places, including artifacts, objects, political cartoons, data, maps, journals, images, and even court rulings. In this dimension, students look more closely at the variety of sources and determine whether they are useful in addressing the question. Students then build an argument or explanation using evidence they have gathered. Dimension 4 closes the arc by having students communicate their conclusions in a variety of forms. This could be a written expression like an essay, or it could be an oral presentation like a debate and speech. Students wanting to leverage technology could work to develop a documentary or blog post in response to a question. Probably the most ambitious part of Dimension 4 is the space for inquiries to end in action. I see action opportunities along a fairly long continuum of options. For example, when you think of students taking informed action, you might immediately think students marching on City Hall. Activism around a social issue is certainly one way for students to demonstrate action. But taking informed action can often take place in the classroom or school. I believe that by opening up the venue for student expression, students are also practicing a form of action. For example, students could write a letter to Congress. They could share their digital documentary to a wider audience. Or maybe they could work on a recycling project at school. As I said earlier, our greatest hope for students is that they are given opportunities to practice civic life in all its many forms. These 4 dimensions will serve as the architecture of this course. Each week, you will spend time with one of the dimensions, building a deep understanding of the inquiry arc, and then applying that understanding in a variety of ways. In the weeks to come, we will practice C3 skills and building lessons that incorporate the entirety of the inquiry arc. But as you begin this journey, I would ask yourself, am I using compelling questions to spark my students' interest in a topic? Am I providing space for students to ask their own questions? Am I supporting students to answer those questions using disciplinary lenses? Do students leverage a variety of mediums to communicate their findings? If you answered yes to any or all of these questions, fantastic. We will offer new ideas, tools, and resources to embellish your existing inquiries. If you answered no, no worries. We're here to help. While I would never say inquiry is easy, I will always say it is worthwhile. Let's experiment over the next 5 weeks and see if Naomi and I can help you embrace inquiry using the Smithsonian's rich archives that are bound to spark any student's curiosity. In the weeks to come, Naomi will introduce you to the museum's approach to object-based learning, and we will continue to unpack the dimensions of the C3. By the end of this course, we hope that you begin to develop a comfort level with the purposes of inquiry and walk away with a flexible toolkit of resources to make your curriculum come alive with possibility. I look forward to working with you as you tinker with the C3 and work to make the inquiry arc your own.